It looks like some people are still trickling in, but I think we can get going. So hello everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for the second webinar of our series. If we haven't met before, my name is Marcella Poloski and I'm the Business Development Representative here at ERP-One. Just a quick background on us before we get into it. ERP-One is an ERP solutions provider. We provide consulting for JDE in technical, application, development, and project management. And we also provide long-term support via staff augmentation or managed services. Our team has over 20 years of experience working with clients as an extension of their own team, and we pride ourselves on our client-centric approach. Our goal is to help customers get the most value out of their ERP investment. Today's presentation, Mastering JDE User Access and Licensing, is presented by Nick Wilson. Nick is ERP-One's Innovation and Technology Lead and has been with ERP-One for over 15 years. He specializes in project management, digital transformation, architecture design and review, and upgrade planning and execution. As always, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please drop them in the comments or in the chat box. We'll make sure to address them at the end of the presentation. And this is being recorded, so if you do miss anything, we will be able to send it your way after the presentation. I will now hand it off to Nick. Enjoy.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Marcella, and welcome everyone to the second webinar in our Release 24 series. Today, our topic is going to be covering the application user access with the purpose of understanding how it can be useful in terms of license management within your E1 system. So in terms of an agenda, we're going to be looking at the benefits of this feature. What can you expect to realize when you implement it, along with Release 24, as well as some of the security considerations that you'll need to review or understand that go along with that. Fairly minor though, however, as the bulk of this presentation will be to uncover and review the features as they've been released, as I mentioned, and then we'll look at the summary at the end. So let's get to it. From an objective perspective, what we're looking to do is get or allow customers to get a detailed view of their application usage across the environment. And so, although this is a mouthful, what Oracle is trying to do with this feature is have a fulsome view of the users that are connecting to the system, what applications, UBEs, different components are they running, and then to track those components in a form, and then you utilize this object usage tracking, some foreshadowing, for your benefit here. And again, that benefit is to understand our license usage. And so really, what does that mean? And again, understanding our license or our application usage, not just objects, but what parts of the application themselves, what does that mean and what are the benefits? And so really, it's all users, all services, integrations, and more, other access points have the ability to be tracked and documented into or detailed in a table and summarized for later on. The endpoints in terms of their source location, other components of their access, and how they get into the system are also dialed in and help make a better assessment across the usage of various modules. It also aids in decision-making for future growth and troubleshooting in terms of detecting anomalies, performing root cause analysis, and a wide range of other uses, are a benefit to implementing these features here. Finally, in terms of licensing and auditing, it fits into and reports off of the existing security model that you've got in place today. And you're able to map the various modules like accounts receivable, accounts payable, general ledger, to the different product and system codes that are attached to each of the objects in E1. And so when you run an object, for example, the P0101, the address book application, it has a system or product code attached to that object for foundation. The address book is a foundation module. And so understanding what users are accessing objects within that module is really the core of understanding your usage and really how does it fit into your existing license model and understanding your risk, if any, in those areas. And so those are the benefits that we're going to drill into here. But let's look at some more specific use cases here. And really, there's not too many, but there's a couple here, and they can be in many different forms. So we kind of generalize them here. But really, the first and most basic one is that the user customer wants to assess or check what is their current license usage and correct if possible. This can be utilized for internal audits if they have the question, procurement, or again, directors asking about various usage there. Similarly, but a little bit more enhanced, is where a customer may have multiple modules in place, like financials, asset lifecycle management, manufacturing, and so on. These, they can view how the usage, customers can view how the usage across all the modules in a single style of dashboard. So you can see that there's one user may be utilizing 5 or 6 different modules, and we can zone in and see that. Finally, users, and this is more on the auditing side, but a user may have access to financial module. They can identify which roles are accessing the module and how many are assigned to each of those roles. So, for example, we may have 5 or 6 roles that have access to accounts payable or AR, or the financials module, but we will need to look, or we would want to look and make sure that there's no additional roles that are opening those objects and utilizing financials module. So there's a lot of sign-on and authorization components, levers that are being pulled and utilized here. On the security perspective, there's 2 major ones in terms of the security history. We're going to see that as a fulsome addition to some of these components. And the classic security workbench, users, roles, and passwords are all incorporated or are used or touched by this applications module. We also have security areas of records that we would need to add or secure out. So although we're looking at the users and login of different objects, there are some new applications that we want to secure and ensure that only a few people have access to them, namely system administrators. And similarly, we also have a UDO security component where the end result is some delivered jet pages that also need to be secured. So let's dive into some of the features here and look at what makes up this usage tracking. It really is composed of 3 main features here. So the what is it portion, as I mentioned, is the ability to track objects that users are running on the system and store them in the database. This simple but powerful feature has unlocked many use cases and an array of scenarios. Just understanding what your systems, what your users are doing is very critical. And those areas are around software updates, process analysis, root cause remediation, elastic computing, and cybersecurity and license audits. So all of that we can use or leverage object tracking for. That's the first one. The second part I mentioned is the security history, rolling out UX-One roles, the system administration role, as well as uplifts to what's tracked in the security history table. It's useful to maintain that role and that persona for system admin functions. And although they're not changing often, they are updated when these UDOs and other objects are rolled out from Oracle. And then finally, the latest feature enhancement that makes the application usage is the module mapping. And this module mapping holds the logic where the modules are mapped to system codes. So let's dive into the object tracking quickly so that we can have an understanding, a baseline, so that we can apply some of these other features and layer them on top of each other. So in terms of the object tracking, this feature is not new. It was released in 9212 and has been somewhat updated over the years, but largely is working as it's been since then. If you're on this release or later, I would strongly suggest turning it on, but there are some considerations that we'll run through here quickly. So in terms of accessing the object tracking, we can go and enable it in the GH902 menu under application development. There is a new menu or a menu there that has access to all of the apps and UBEs that you'll need when configuring this feature. You can look at enabling from this GH902 menu. You can enable the object tracking by with two levers or two metrics here. So we can enable it by the environment, so by DV, PY, production, or your custom environments as well are all enableable, right? We can enable them. And we can also track the objects by these three types: application, UBEs, and business functions. When looking at applications and UBEs, the object track or the application usage tracking is really looking at these ones more heavily. But from the business function perspective, understanding and using or knowing which users are running business functions is important for troubleshooting. So once it's enabled, or after it's enabled, you can also manage some exclusion lists so that you can enable and say that you don't want to track some objects if they're sensitive in nature or there's some configuration where these exclusions are required. You can enable and both the configuration and the exclusion information is stored in the F98900 table. Zoning in further, we now have a little bit of a process now. So once it's enabled, the object tracking itself follows three main steps. And again, it's not very difficult or hard to understand, but what it does is first collects data. So the end users, as they're running apps, UBEs, business functions, depending on how many users you've got, there is a lot of data can be inserted into the detail table and somewhat very quickly it can grow. There are some purge and UBE reports, we will see those, but that is the process that we'll need to look at here. That object usage tracking table, F98, 911, as I mentioned, holds all that detail, and it's got all of the information stored in there. On the summarized UBE, so that those detail tables show through some E1 applications, as well as some JET components, graphs, and analytics. We can see the usage and how it's sliced and diced by various ways there. How we do that, though, is through a summarized UBE. As I said, there is a lot of data in this table, And although the detail is useful for some scenarios where you're, again, troubleshooting or wanting to get down to the user level, which there is a scenario where you want that, you can also purge and summarize the data that will roll it up into a few different ways so that you can report on it much easier. If we didn't do this summarize, every time we wanted to run a report or display some graphs, it would have to chug and calculate and process, compute that data in the detail table, which would just take too long. What Oracle has planned and delivered was for the summarized UBEs to do the heavy lifting for us and then put that summarized data into a table. Not unlike the sales history type of concept, if you're familiar with sales order management. So moving on to the summary, we've got a few different things that we can summarize by. So in terms of the object tracking type, we can summarize the usage. So how many, the users and what they've opened, we can summarize in terms of just a straight object name. If we want to see how many times users have opened an object, we can view that in terms of tracking type O1. We can get more granular if we want to see the unique opens of object name, the form, and the version itself. And so this is more granular. We will have more records, but you will be much more specific in the types of forms and versions that are being opened, especially if you're a setup or have an environment where the versions are specific for companies or other business units. You may want to see users or roles and how they've been mapped to those specific versions. You can also track the objects based on product code and then the object name and business object as well. So those are the types that we can summarize. And then each of those types we can summarize by a tracking unit or by a time unit, a time scale. And so this table, this summary for each of the object types, 1 through 4 on the left, you can summarize by the time factor on the right. So you can do hours per day, days per month, or months per year. Finally, once the data is summarized, and one note I will say is that the summarized UBEs, when they run, they do an add data for the table there. And so the data is added on top of the previously run data set. And then once that's run, like I mentioned, we would do a purge to clean out the detail records. You can summarize the data many different times if you wanted to. There is you could see the different combinations that you could potentially do. And so of the 12 UBEs that you could run, you could potentially have the purge run when they're completed. So what does this look like in general, or sorry, as an end result? Again, using the summarize data in the tables, we can see that there's these graphs that Oracle has delivered that show the object usage, daily peak time, object usage by path code, and object usage by product code. And these graphs will take the summary data and then display them on the screen, where you can then consume the data and drill into or apply the different filters that you need to. There's a lot of different data here, and as I mentioned, it can be used in different ways. The next enhancement, the security enhancement for that came along with 926, is an uplift to the F9312 security logging table, and primarily the system administrator role. This UX1 role holds all of the latest security and UDOs and features are associated with that persona. These are the other charts. I haven't shown them all here. They're not all relevant to the application module mapping, but here are the other charts that are included in the security enhancement composite page. And so now we get to release 24. We know object tracking now. We understand a little bit about how it operates. And we know that we can take that usage data and map it to these modules. So by product code, we now have a cross-reference which shows us some direct relationships with, for example, the financials module, which product codes are included in those financial modules. And then we can report on those relationships there. You can also, so what this does is this cross-reference is the licensing information that Oracle would use when performing these potential site audits. And one thing I will note is that this table does not store your license agreements. What it does store is the relationship for the modules and product codes. And then that, along with the object usage, gives us the insight. You can also add third-party or custom modules to this table so that you can track your own solutions or other third-party delivered solutions. So we can see here the financials module in our latest table. On the left-hand side, I filtered for finance. And on the right-hand side, we can see all of the system codes that are associated with finance. Looking at the excuse me, sorry, step here. So within the application module mapping application, you can, as I mentioned, you can add new system codes if we press the add button, and we can leverage and include the latest, we can include additional system codes as long as we add in a UDC value into 98 AM. This UDC value is where we will store the custom name. So I've created one here called ERP-One in our UDC table. When we go and add a mapping, we can then map system code 55 to my custom ERP-One solution module. So what do we see as the end result here is this JET component. There's two delivered JET components that really are the basis of this entire feature. This one is the user access by application. And we can see here that we've got 19 users that have opened or utilized the system foundation. We can see we've got 9 users that have opened or have used the core tools and infrastructure module. And then we've got 1 or 2 or 3 of the other modules that have been utilized. This data has come from the object tracking tables and again gets summarized using the mapping table and cross-referenced there. So you can see that when you want to reconcile, consolidate against your license agreements that you currently have, you can use this data to help you with that. In the same fashion, you can also look at the module usage by role itself. So which roles have access or have accessed these different modules? We can clearly see that here. And we can confirm that a user, although they may have access to the object, they may actually be granted that object because they've got the system admin role or some other role that they may not need or have or should have. Some of those anomalies you can find out and see clearly on this page. And then the last component that Oracle has delivered is a composite page. This is primarily for system administrators and it's called the JDE usage tracking JET page. And all of those JET components that we looked at earlier those analytics or E1 pages are all outlined on this composite page. So you can drill into and click on the application user access by role, by user. You can see all of the charts for the object usage tracking, and you can look at the security and history tracking all in one spot here. These are all UDO delivered objects. And although each of these JET components does have a P application associated with it, they are essentially E1 pages that are Java extension toolkits. That's what JET stands for. They're Java pages that have been delivered by Oracle. So drilling in here, all of those analytics that we looked at on the previous slide, they have some more detail here. I put this in for reference to have a look at, but there's more detail around the type of data that you can extract out of each of those analytics and how they operate together. And the top two are the latest ones with tools or release 24. So going back to our summary here, our object usage tracking, security history, and application module mapping are the features that go into overall enterprise-wide application usage tracking. So this is the summary of the presentation here. That object tracking data and security data is used or utilized as the usage data for the application modules. You can reconcile your Oracle license and actual usage easily and quickly. And finally, this is the gateway. This is the avenue into further enhancements that you may want to implement using application-wide application-wide usage tracking. And so with that, I'll hand it back over to Marcella to do a quick roundup and some potential questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nick. Just a reminder, if you do have any questions, you can drop them in the chat or the Q&A. But the first question that we got was, can I map my current Oracle license contract data into this tool to do the comparison directly in JDE?
That's a great question. And so at the moment, you cannot do that, but you certainly can utilize, or if we were thinking about the art of the possible, implementing a watch list or something along those lines with some of this usage tracking could be a rudimentary way of implementing that approach. But understanding or knowing your risk exposure in a single view is certainly an amazing dashboard to have handy.
Awesome, thank you. And one more question. What is one key takeaway I can use to align my usage data with my Oracle license contract?
Well, I think that is a great question. I would say that understanding, so a takeaway, although I'm not sure that there would be many takeaways of aligning your contract here, other than I would say understanding what exactly the levers are on your contract. If it is a named user versus revenue or other components are important. And with the mapping, you can now see the relationship a lot more clearly now. Whereas previously, if you didn't know that mapping, it was a little bit more difficult to understand those relationships. Thank you.
Perfect. Looks like no other questions are coming through. So thank you, Nick, and thank you everybody for joining us today. As usual, I'll be sending out an email with the recording of the webinar, so keep an eye out in your inboxes. And in the meantime, please check us out on LinkedIn. We're always sharing helpful tips and blog posts. And also please keep an eye out for our third and final webinar of the series that will be coming up soon. Thanks again.
Thank you.